Greetings, this is revision recording number 7. This is for Unit 2 of AQA GCSE Business Studies, and this is the second topic in the Year 11 work, and it's marketing. And it's talking about the marketing mix for growing businesses. Obviously you've covered the marketing mix for small businesses and thought about the budgets they're likely to have and the aims they're likely to have with their promotions and their marketing mix. However, for growing businesses there are some slightly different issues to think about. So if we're thinking about the product within product, price, promotion, place, the benefits of having a large product range are that we can increase customer spend per visit. So for example, hairdressers don't just cut your hair, then they offer you some shampoo or some styling products, and you spend more in a visit than if you would have done if you just had your hair cut. If you aim at different target markets, then you've got to have a large product range to be able to sell to all those different target markets. So you could have, for example, a nightclub that opens during the day as a cafe. So you've got your nightclub customers during the night, and then you've got different customers coming in for a coffee during the day. And then you're spreading risk. For example, Innocent Smoothies have a range of juices now, and also they've brought out noodle pots and lunches. The benefit of doing this is that if you spread your risk there, if a product is hit by bad publicity, so for example smoothies are said to have a lot of sugar in, then they've still got other products to fall back on. However, it can be expensive to do that because you've got to develop new products, you've got to stock those products, and if the product's not successful, you've wasted that money on them. However, if you've got a bad PR on one product, for example with Tesco selling burgers that had, or was it lasagna that had horse meat in, then people think negatively about all the products sold by that company. And then obviously there's going to be cost involved. If you've got new products coming in to fulfill all these needs, then you're going to have more staff to look after those product areas, so it's going to cost you money in training, in recruiting those staff. But having a large product range in a growing business is not at all a bad thing. Now, if you're looking at products again, we talk about the product life cycle. And this is where we look at the business and we look at the products within the business and we say, okay, how do we need to adapt our marketing mix at different stages of the product life cycle? For example, if we've just launched a product, then it's new, we might charge a high price for it, and we'll look at pricing strategies in a minute. As it grows, we might start doing some promotions to actually grow the product into the market. The product starts to mature, everyone's got one, they're out there, they're readily accessible, they're not particularly expensive, and then the market becomes saturated and starts to decline and sales start to fall. And at that point, that's when we need to consider what's called extension strategies. And extension strategies might be that we reposition a product to different target markets. For example, Lucozade used to be seen as something that you took to someone if they'd been ill, and obviously now, these days, it's seen as a product that's for sports people. So it's been repositioned to a different target market with a new use, really. It's a new market for the product. And another way of finding a new market for the product, another example of that, would be that cigarettes are being promoted in developing countries. That's a new market. They're not selling them in the West, they're not promoting them in our country anymore, really, because they're not allowed to. So they've found other markets like China where they are allowed to sell them or promote them. You can update your advertising campaigns. Coca-Cola are a brilliant example of this. They're constantly updating their advertising campaign and keeping it relevant and keeping it young and keeping it fresh, and they've been around for 100 years or so. McDonald's are a good example of changing your brand image or your packaging. McDonald's now try to show us that they're for everybody, and they've got a healthier brand image than previously, where they've had some very bad publicity about fast food, and their brand image has suffered as a result. So they're changing their brand image constantly, and Coca-Cola do this as well, try and sound like they're a healthy product to stop the decline of their brand. And then you can add value or modify the product. So for example, if you've got something like an Xbox, when it first comes in, you have to buy all your games separately. Now if you buy an Xbox, you'll get bundles of games with it. That's because the product's is saturated, it's a mature product now, and the more we can give the customers along with that product, the more likely they are to keep buying it. And the pricing strategies that we think about then depend on the position in the product life cycle. So as I said, if you're launching a product, there's a couple of ways you could go about pricing the product. If you've got something like an iPad that's new technology and there's nothing else out there available, you can go in at a high price, and this is called price skimming. You're charging a lot of money, you're skimming off as much profit as you can. It makes it highly desirable, and only the sort of flash people are going to buy it. And then as more competitors come into the market, as the product grows, then you're going to change your pricing strategy from skimming more to competitive pricing, which is where what's everybody else charging? We need to be competitive. If you were coming in with a new product, for example a shampoo, there's lots of people out there with shampoos on the market. So how am I going to get people to actually try my new product? Well, if I do something called penetration pricing, I'm going to quickly penetrate the market with a low price. So for example, I've brought out my new shampoo, it looks great, it's on the shelves, it's £1. I say, right, new shampoo, £1. It'll get people to try it. And then I can gradually put my price up using competitive pricing, and as the product grows, as we go into the growth stage of the product life cycle. Other things that we can look at in terms of pricing are, obviously I've mentioned competitive pricing. We looked at cost plus pricing in Unit 1, which is where I look at how much did it cost to make, what are my costs, now add a percentage to make my profit, and that's it done. Most businesses will use a combination of competitive, cost plus, and then they might use some of the marketing strategies there with the penetration or price skimming. Another one that businesses, especially big businesses, use is something called a loss leader. And you'll see this at the supermarkets. When they say bread £1 or buy your bread and milk here for £2, they're not making any profit on that. But what they are hoping is you'll go in, you'll get your bread and milk for £2, and then you'll spend a tenner on other things as you walk around the supermarket where they are making a decent profit. So that's called a loss leader, where you have loss leaders to promote people to come in and spend money in your business. And then there's psychological pricing, which of course we're all very familiar with. £9.99. It's as good as £10, isn't it? But in our minds it doesn't look like £10. It looks less than that, and that's called psychological pricing. I've skipped on to pricing, but actually I'd missed out product, price, promotion, place. Oh, okay, so promotion. Let's look at promotion. If I'm selecting the mix of my promotional mix, most businesses don't just do one type of promotion. Most businesses do lots of things, especially nowadays with social media. The things that you need to consider: what's our budget? What can we afford? How much are we going to spend on this? You know, what's it actually going to bring for us? If it's only going to bring 10 grand of sales, then I'm not spending 20 grand on a promotional campaign. And who are my target market? Really important. Who are we trying to target? That's got to, otherwise it's a complete waste of money if you target the wrong people. So you've got to look at the type of product. If you're selling to other businesses, then you want to go through trade press, through trade channels. If you're selling to some consumers, you've got to find where your consumers are and how you can talk to them. What are competitors doing? You don't always have to follow what the competition are doing because their promotions might not be working. So methods of promotion for growing businesses, you can talk about TV advertising, and TV advertising is obviously brilliant. You're talking about, you can tell people about new products, you can change your brand image, you can remind customers about your brand, but it's expensive and it can be hard to reach some consumers. For example, your age group, 15 to 34, are traditionally the hardest people to reach by TV advertising because you're out doing different things. You're on social media, you're studying for your exams. Note the sense of sarcasm there. But it can be very effective. If you can get your TV advertising right, it can be very effective. Sales promotions, obviously really good for any kind of business. You can do games, competitions, special offers, buy one get one free. They can be relatively cheap to run. And can be very, very effective if you can get something that will go viral and that people will share around social media. Direct marketing, email, phone calls, direct mail, leaflets. You can target your target market, and that's where that's really good. The other one of the 4 P's here, product, price, promotion, place. Think about channels of distribution. So you've got your manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer would be your traditional route. Obviously nowadays you get your manufacturer selling directly online, so that's your more recent route, and obviously the manufacturer stands to make more profit by selling direct to the consumer. But you can also consider telesales, which is where you phone people up and ask if they want to buy your product or service. Consumers don't like this very much, but businesses, it's a lot more prevalent in the business world. Business to business, you can phone a business and offer you services. And if you've got a growing business and you can't afford to send people out there as a sales team, then obviously it's good just to be, if you can just make a phone call to sell. Mail order, you can send out catalogues. Very, very good if you can drive people to your website by sending out a catalogue with just a taster of what you've got on your website. I know Next Directory do this and show me a selection of the clothes they've got, and it makes me think, oh, I'll have a look at what they've got online. And you can target specific customers with mail order, with catalogues. And then online selling, be careful with this. Never ever say it's cheap to do. You've got to set up your website, you've still got to store your stock somewhere, and you've still got to distribute, you've still got to pack up your goods, you've still got to get them out there. But you can obviously reach global customers with that. And that is the marketing mix for growing businesses.